Ethan Hale had escorted diplomats through dangerous places before, but the palace of Velisara felt different. It was quiet in a way that made the skin prickle, like a room where something important had been hidden for too long. The alien world shimmered under a violet sky, its twin suns casting soft light across towers grown from living crystal. Every surface reflected color, beauty shaped with care and purpose. The Velisari people believed beauty was order, and order was power. Ethan had learned that much during the briefing. He walked behind the high envoy, his posture straight, his steps measured. As a human military liaison, his job was simple: observe, protect, and say little. Humans were still new to the wider galaxy. Some species admired them. Others feared them. The Velisari watched them with careful eyes. The royal court gathered in a wide hall, nobles arranged by rank, their forms tall and elegant. Their skin glowed in shades of silver and pale blue. Their faces were smooth, almost perfect by their standards. Ethan noticed how often they glanced at reflective surfaces, adjusting posture, angle, expression. Beauty here was not casual. It was a duty. The queen spoke, her voice calm and musical. The meeting proceeded as expected: trade routes, security agreements, shared borders. Yet something felt missing. Ethan sensed it like an empty space in the room. He noticed it when the high envoy asked politely about the royal family. "We are honored to meet your children," the envoy said. A brief silence followed, too brief to be polite, too long to be nothing. The queen inclined her head. "My eldest stands among the council, my second commands our outer fleets." "And the youngest?" the envoy asked. A noble shifted, another looked away. "She is not suited for public appearances," the queen said. The meeting moved on, but Ethan's curiosity remained. Humans were good at noticing what others avoided. It was one of their strengths, or weaknesses, depending on who you asked. Later that cycle, as the delegation rested in their assigned wing, Ethan requested permission to walk the inner gardens. The Velisari guards allowed it, watching him closely. The gardens were quiet, filled with tall plants that hummed softly as energy flowed through their leaves. Paths curved gently, designed to lead the eye toward beauty at every turn. Ethan followed one path that seemed less traveled, where the light dimmed and the air grew cooler. That was where he heard a voice, soft, uncertain. "I should not be here." Ethan stopped. Slowly he turned. She stood near a pool of glowing water, her reflection broken by gentle ripples. She was Velisari, but different. Her skin held deeper tones, her patterns less symmetrical. One horn curved slightly off balance. Her eyes were large, luminous, filled with worry. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I'll leave." She hesitated. "You are human." "Yes," he said. "Ethan." She studied him with open caution. "I am Celira." The name carried weight. Ethan felt it. "You're the princess," he said, not as a question. She looked down. "Yes." Silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, just unsure. Ethan remained still, making no sudden movements. Humans had learned that calm mattered when dealing with species unfamiliar with them. "I didn't know this area was restricted," he said. "It is not," Celira replied. "It is simply unused." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes the best places are." She almost smiled. Almost. They stood together for several breaths. Celira's hands were clasped tightly, her posture guarded. "You should not be speaking to me," she said at last. "Why?" Ethan asked gently. "Because humans admire beauty," she said. "And I am not beautiful, not to my people, and certainly not compared to human women." The words were practiced, repeated too many times. Ethan frowned slightly, not in anger but in confusion. He looked at her carefully, really looked. He saw the way her eyes reflected the garden light, how her presence felt calm, thoughtful. He saw strength held back by fear. "I don't agree," he said. She looked up sharply. "You do not have to lie." "I'm not," he replied. "I think you're magnificent." The words seemed to echo in the garden. Celira froze, her breathing caught just slightly. "No one has ever said that," she whispered. Ethan shifted his weight. Then they missed something important. Her eyes searched his face, looking for mockery, pity, cruelty. She found none, only honesty. "You do not understand," she said. "Among my people, symmetry is perfection. Balance is worth. I lack both." Ethan crouched slightly so they were closer to eye level. "Among humans," he said, "perfection is boring." That startled a sound from her, almost a laugh. He continued carefully. "We don't value people for looking the same. We value stories, choices, what someone carries and still stands." Salira said nothing. Her hands loosened. "You stand," Ethan added. "That matters." For the first time she met his gaze fully. They spoke for a long while after that, about small things, Earth's oceans, Velisara's moons. She asked about human art, confused by the idea that humans celebrated flaws, scars, and age. When the palace lights dimmed, Salira stepped back. "I should go," she said, "before someone notices." Ethan stood. "I won't tell anyone." "I know," she replied. "That is why I spoke to you." She left quietly, leaving Ethan alone with the glowing pool and a strange heaviness in his chest. The next day, whispers moved through the court. A human had been seen near the inner gardens. The nobles scoffed, assuming nothing important could come from it. They were wrong. That evening, alarms rang through the palace. Ethan was with the delegation when the lights flickered. His training kicked in instantly. He moved, placing himself between the envoy and the nearest entrance. Velisari guards rushed past, weapons raised. A sharp sound cut through the air, followed by a cry. "Princess Wing breached," someone shouted. Ethan's blood went cold. He didn't wait for orders. He ran. The corridors twisted, but his memory guided him. He reached the private wing as smoke filled the air. Two armored figures lay unconscious, strange devices sparking beside them. Salira stood frozen near her chamber door. "Ethan," she breathed. He moved in front of her without thinking. Dark figures emerged from the shadows, alien mercenaries bearing unfamiliar weapons. They hesitated when they saw the human. "Move," one ordered. Ethan didn't. He acted. Humans were not the strongest species, not the fastest, but they were adaptable. He used the environment, the narrow corridor, the shock of unexpected resistance. He disarmed one attacker, slammed another into the wall, pain flaring but focus holding. Velisari guards arrived moments later, finishing the fight. When it was over, Ethan leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Salira stared at him. "You risked yourself," she said. "Yes," he replied simply. "Why?" He looked at her. "Because you matter." The words were not dramatic, they were true. The queen arrived soon after. She took in the scene, the human standing protectively before her daughter. Something unreadable crossed her face. Later, in the quiet that followed, Salira sat beside Ethan in a secure chamber. Her hands trembled slightly. "They wanted to make an example of me," she said. "A weakness." Ethan shook his head. "They failed." She looked at him, really looked. "I believed I was less," she said. "Even compared to your people." Ethan met her gaze. "You're not less, you're different, and different changes things." For the first time in her life, Salira believed him. Outside the chamber, the palace whispered with uncertainty. A human had defied expectations. A hidden princess had been protected. And the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, had begun to shift. The palace was quieter than usual after the attack. Guards patrolled with sharper focus, and nobles whispered in hallways, their eyes constantly scanning for weakness. Salira stayed within the inner wing, reluctant to appear in public. She avoided mirrors, avoided conversation, avoided attention. But Ethan remained at her side, not as a bodyguard, not as a servant, but as someone who refused to see her as less. That alone unsettled her. "You do not understand," Salira said one evening, sitting by a window that overlooked the glowing city of Velisara. The twin suns were dipping behind distant mountains, painting the sky in colors she had always loved but rarely admitted. "My people see flaws. They cannot accept them. I cannot appear weak or ugly to them. That is survival." Ethan watched her quietly. Humans did not need to speak to express understanding. Sometimes presence was enough. "You survived today," he said softly. "And that is stronger than any symmetry your people value." She shook her head. "It is not enough. If anyone knew how I felt, how I look, they would see me as unfit." "You are unfit to be defined by them," he replied. "That's the difference." Salira's lips parted slightly, surprise flickering in her eyes. Most Velisari would have lectured, scolded, or hid themselves further. Humans, she realized, did neither. They acted as though what others thought could not touch them. The next day, rumors spread faster than the light through Velisara's crystal corridors. Some nobles assumed the human would reject the princess, that he would leave once he understood her imperfections. Others whispered of treachery, saying a human meddling in royal matters was dangerous. Ethan ignored all of it. He met the princess each day, walking through the gardens, practicing conversation, sharing stories of Earth. She learned about oceans, forests, storms, and sunsets. He described humans, love for art that captured imperfection, music that thrived on emotion rather than structure, stories about people who struggled and rose again. Salira listened with fascination. She began to see that the human world valued something her society had forgotten: spirit, strength, choice. And when she looked at him, she realized humans did not measure beauty in the same way Velisari did. Then came the day when the attackers returned. It was subtle at first. Small alarms, unexplained movements, shadows in the corridors. Velisari intelligence discovered that a rival empire had sent agents to eliminate the imperfect princess. They aimed not only to kill her, but to humiliate her, exposing her weaknesses to the galaxy. Ethan sensed it before anyone else. Humans had intuition built from experience on planets where danger lurked in places others thought safe. "They're coming again," he told Salira quietly. "We need to be ready." "What can we do?" she asked, fear threading through her voice. "Survive," he said, "like humans always do." The night the rival forces struck, chaos erupted in the palace. Weapons unfamiliar to the Velisari hissed and sparked. The invaders used advanced stealth devices, trying to bypass the palace security systems. Guards were thrown off balance, caught unprepared for such tactics. Ethan moved without hesitation. Humans did not panic. He ran toward the inner wing, using the narrow corridors to his advantage. He assessed every angle, every shadow, every opportunity. Unlike the Velisari, he did not rely on sheer elegance or power. He relied on adaptability. Salira watched from her chamber door, fear and awe battling within her. She had always thought herself weak. Now she saw a human standing between her and death, calm, deliberate, and utterly fearless. Ethan confronted the intruders in the corridor. They underestimated him. Their weapons were designed for strength, but he used speed, angles, and the environment. He disarmed one and threw another into a wall. Sparks flew from the damaged devices, but he pressed forward, focused entirely on protecting the princess. Velisari guards arrived shortly after, too late to prevent Ethan from engaging the attackers, but in time to help end the fight. When it was over, the corridor smelled of ozone and burnt machinery. Bodies, unconscious but alive, lay scattered. The humans and Velisari had survived. Salira approached slowly, her steps hesitant. "You risked yourself," she said, almost in disbelief. "Yes," Ethan replied simply. "I could not let them take you." She stared at him, processing the words. Humans had a different way of valuing life, a different measure of courage. She had never experienced such an unshakable presence. Her heart, long shadowed by doubt, felt lighter. In the days that followed, the court changed subtly. Whispers grew louder, not just about the attack but about Ethan. The humans' disregard for Velisari customs, especially in protecting Salira, disturbed some, fascinated others. The princess herself began to test her limits. She requested that Ethan accompany her to public events, carefully at first, walking beside her through the gardens and corridors. The nobles stared, expecting shame, embarrassment, or collapse. Instead, Salira walked taller than she ever had, speaking with a newfound confidence. Ethan never overshadowed her, he simply supported her. The first time she appeared before the council, all eyes turned. Some expected the human to hesitate, to falter under the weight of Velisari beauty standards, but he did not. He stood calmly, a quiet pillar of assurance. The room, tense at first, began to shift. Salira spoke clearly, without hesitation. She referenced her duties, her concerns, and even the attack. She acknowledged fear without shame. Humans valued truth, and her human companion had shown her that. The nobles could not ignore the change. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, intelligence systems recorded the events. Other species, curious about human behavior, began to notice a pattern. Humans did not act like other species. They did not bow to fear, shame, or rigid beauty standards. They were unpredictable, persistent, and most of all, unafraid of what others valued most. Salira continued to meet Ethan daily. They discussed tactics, politics, and the differences between their worlds. She learned to understand humans, emphasis on choice, ingenuity, and resilience. With each lesson, she grew stronger, not just physically, but in presence and confidence. One evening, while walking in the gardens, she paused beside a glowing pool. "Do you really mean it?" she asked softly. "Do you see me as magnificent?" Ethan looked at her directly. "I see you as someone who changed how I understand courage, fear, and beauty. Magnificent is just a word. You are extraordinary." Her chest tightened. Few words had ever carried such weight. Her people had measured her for perfection, and every moment she had doubted herself. But this human, unlike anyone else, valued what mattered most: her choices, her courage, her mind. That night, when the palace lights dimmed and the city below glimmered like a living gem, Salira realized something. She had begun to believe in herself. Not because others forced her to, not because the court accepted her, but because one human saw her truly. And as whispers continued, some admiring, some fearful, the truth became clear. Humans did not just survive. They reshaped the perception of power, influence, and worth. Salira's transformation was proof. For the first time in her life, she did not hide. She did not shrink. She did not doubt. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. She glanced at Ethan, who remained silent, always calm, always steadfast. His presence had become a force more powerful than any weapon, more effective than any decree. It was human courage, human perspective, human integrity, the qualities her people had ignored for centuries. Salira smiled just slightly, but it was genuine. "We are ready," she said, her voice carrying confidence she had never known. "No matter what comes next, we face it together." Ethan nodded. Together. The rival empire's spies had made a mistake. They had assumed the princess's weakness was her appearance. They had not counted on human insight, human courage, and the quiet strength that came from seeing the value in someone others overlooked. The Velisari court and the galaxy beyond would learn a hard lesson. Humans were more than warriors. They were catalysts. They were unpredictable. They were magnificent in ways no one could measure. And as Salira prepared to step fully into the light, she realized her world had shifted irrevocably. With Ethan by her side, she was no longer hidden. She was no longer ashamed. She was alive, aware, and ready to change the galaxy, one truth at a time. The journey was far from over, but the first step had been taken. Humanity, with its courage and vision, had already begun to leave its mark, and the princess, once hiding from the world, now stood ready to be seen. The next challenge would come. It always did. But for the first time, Salira did not fear it. Not with a human beside her who had taught her that beauty, courage, and worth were measured in ways no one else could understand. She took a deep breath, ready for the dawn. And in the quiet of Velisara's violet night, she felt the impossible truth. Humans did not simply survive, they redefined the impossible. And she would follow that truth, wherever it led. The sun rose slowly over Velisara, its twin flames painting the sky in soft golds and violets. The palace was unusually quiet, as though holding its breath. Sailira stood on the balcony, looking down at the streets below, aware that today would not be ordinary. Today, the rival empire would attempt to humiliate her publicly. She had seen their records. Old holograms, carefully selected moments meant to show weakness, fear, and imperfection. They wanted to prove she was unfit to rule, to weaken her people, and perhaps even provoke a war. But she had changed. Humans had shown her a truth her people had never taught. Worth was not measured by symmetry or perfection. Worth was choice, courage, and spirit. Ethan approached quietly, as he always did. "Are you ready?" he asked, his tone calm, almost reassuring. Humans had a way of grounding those around them, even when danger was imminent. Sailira turned to him, the morning light illuminating her features. She saw strength reflected in his eyes, the kind of strength humans carried effortlessly. "I am," she said. "But this will be hard. They will try to humiliate me in front of everyone." Ethan smiled slightly. "Then let them see who you truly are, not the mask they expect. You are stronger than they think." The council chamber filled quickly. Nobles and dignitaries from across the galaxy crowded in, curious to witness the spectacle. Holographic displays flickered in the air, showing clips of Sailira from years ago. Some showed her faltering during training, others captured moments when she had appeared unsure in public. The display was meant to humiliate, but as she stepped forward, Ethan stayed at her side, a silent pillar of support. The room held its breath as she began to speak. Her voice was calm, deliberate, and clear. "You have chosen to show the galaxy what you believe I am," she said. "A princess unworthy, unfit, weak. You have shown your fear of imperfection." Whispers ran through the audience. Some expected her to falter. Some already believed the human beside her would step forward and defend her. But Ethan did not. He simply stood, silent, his presence amplifying her words. "I am not defined by the past," Sailira continued. "I am not defined by symmetry, by balance, by the expectations of others. I am defined by my choices, my courage, and my will to protect my people. And if that makes me imperfect to you, then so be it. Imperfection does not diminish strength, it creates it." A ripple ran through the chamber. The holograms flickered, fading as attendants tried to override them. The crowd looked at her in shock. Never had a Velisari princess spoken with such defiance, and certainly not without fear. Ethan remained beside her, eyes steady. He had taught her without words that human courage was not loud or showy. It was measured, deliberate, unafraid of consequence. She embodied that lesson now. From the back of the chamber, emissaries from the rival empire attempted to interject, projecting sharper holograms and recording their own commentary. But it did not matter. Sailira had turned the narrative. Instead of hiding, she faced it openly. "You seek to humiliate me with my past," she said, her gaze steady. "But history is not a weapon, it is a teacher. And today I teach the galaxy that true strength is not flawless beauty. True strength is action, resilience, and truth." A murmur of approval rose from some members of the audience, shocking others. Humans had been underestimated, but their influence on Sailira was clear. The princess, once hidden and ashamed, now radiated confidence. She was no longer a subject to pity, she was a force to be reckoned with. The rival empire's emissaries exchanged nervous glances. They had expected fear, submission, embarrassment. Instead, they faced clarity and courage. For the first time, they began to see the truth. Humans, through their actions and influence, reshaped expectations across the galaxy. After the council meeting, Sailira returned to the gardens with Ethan. She was quiet at first, processing the intensity of the day. The experience had been exhausting, yet empowering. "You were magnificent," Ethan said simply. "Not because of what you showed them, but because of what you allowed yourself to be." She smiled faintly. "I learned from you. You taught me that courage is not about fearlessness. It is about facing what frightens you anyway. Ethan nodded. Humans do that every day. We survive, adapt, and act even when the odds are impossible. You did the same today. You are not less. You are extraordinary. In the following cycles, the ripple effect of that day spread beyond Velisara. Neighboring systems began to study human behavior more closely. Diplomats sought their counsel. Leaders reconsidered alliances. Humans were no longer merely a new species. They were catalysts of change, their influence altering perspectives and challenging centuries of expectation. Celira, now confident and assertive, began meeting other leaders herself. She carried lessons from humans into every negotiation. Her once hidden features were now a symbol of defiance against outdated norms, and with Ethan at her side, she felt unshakable. The rival empire, humiliated by the failure of their plan, withdrew temporarily, reassessing their approach. But Celira knew this was only the beginning. Humans did not scare easily. They learned, adapted, and turned adversity into opportunity. With Ethan's guidance, she embraced the same philosophy. One evening, as the twin suns set again, casting long shadows across the palace, Celira and Ethan walked through the gardens. The flowers hummed, energy flowing through their leaves, reflecting the light of the fading sun. "Do you ever fear them?" Celira asked. "The ones who will always try to find weakness." Ethan shook his head. "Fear is natural. What matters is what you do despite it. Humans are never flawless. We make mistakes, but we act, and that changes everything." She looked at him, understanding fully now. Humans did not need perfection to succeed. They only needed courage, honesty, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. "That is why I trusted you," she said softly. "You saw me when no one else would." "And that made all the difference." Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I saw you for who you really are, not who others told you to be." For the first time in her life, Celira felt the full weight of that truth. She was no longer defined by her society's narrow standards. She was not hidden, not ashamed, not second. She was fully herself, and that self carried power and influence no one could ignore. Weeks later, as the political landscape shifted, leaders from multiple systems came to Velisara to witness the changes firsthand. They saw the princess walk confidently through the city, supported by a human whose presence alone redefined expectations. Humans were still new, but they were now impossible to ignore. Celira realized that the galaxy had begun to measure worth differently, not by appearance, status, or rigid rules, but by action, choice, and integrity. And in that measurement, humans were unmatched. Ethan and Celira stood together on the balcony one evening, overlooking the city alive with light and movement. "The galaxy will test us again," she said. "I know it." Ethan's hand rested lightly on the railing beside her. "And when it does, we will be ready. Not because we are perfect, but because we act, and that is more powerful than perfection." The city below seemed to pulse with possibility. Velisara, once a place obsessed with beauty and order, had become a proving ground for something more enduring: courage, wisdom, and the human spirit. Celira turned to Ethan. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing me, for teaching me, for standing by me." Ethan shook his head. "No, you did it yourself. I only reminded you how to see it." And in that moment, the bond between human and alien princess was clear. It was not based on superficial beauty, societal expectation, or fear. It was based on respect, understanding, and the recognition that worth is measured in courage and choice. Across the galaxy, observers noted the change. Humans were no longer outsiders. They were catalysts. Their influence reshaped traditions, challenged expectations, and proved that even the smallest, quietest actions could have consequences far greater than anyone imagined. Celira smiled at the city lights, then at Ethan. Together, they had faced fear, uncertainty, and deception. Together, they had changed perceptions, saved lives, and created a new path forward. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, leaving a soft glow that reflected off the crystal towers. Sailira stood taller than ever, a symbol of transformation, a proof of the human spirit's reach, and a living testament to the fact that even in a galaxy obsessed with perfection, courage and choice could redefine everything. And as the stars began to appear in the violet sky, the human beside her whispered quietly, "You are magnificent." Sailira smiled, fully believing it this time. And for the first time, she knew that being seen for who she truly was had already changed the galaxy forever. The challenges ahead would be many. Rival empires, political intrigue, and endless tests awaited. But for now, Sailira felt invincible, not because of perfection, but because she had learned the human way, to act, to endure, and to redefine what was possible. The galaxy had learned something new that day. Humanity was more than a species. It was a force. And when it chose to act, no one, alien, empire, or expectation could ignore it. And with Ethan standing silently by her side, Sailira realized the greatest truth of all. Together, they were unstoppable. The princess, once hidden and ashamed, now walked openly through the halls of her world. She was alive, confident, and ready for anything. Humanity had taught her that strength came from action, courage, and heart. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was beginning to understand the same lesson. The story of the hidden princess and the human who saw her would be told for generations. A story not of perfection, but of courage, choice, and the enduring power of seeing someone for who they truly are.